right, can everybody see this quarterly goal setting seminar screen?
Yes.
Okay, so fabulous. So everyone's got the workbook, everyone can see the screen. Let's jump on in. So really, before you ever even get started setting your goals, we want to review how everything went in the previous or the current quarter. So I've given you some journaling questions, and don't skip them because they're so important to really get at your own mindset, where you are today. Forget about your notes from last time. Forget about when you did your business plan. We're going to start today fresh where we are and answer these questions. In the last quarter, or in the previous quarter, this quarter, from January to March, what were your 3 biggest wins in this period? And really take some time, because sometimes your wins are not what you anticipated them being, and they're not what you thought they were going to be, and maybe not even what you wanted them to be. But figure out what your 3 biggest wins are, whether they're in your head, whether they're something tangible, whatever they are. And what did you learn from each one of these wins? And of those wins, what sort of brought them on? What were you doing that these wins happened? And figure out, are there activities that you were doing to achieve them? What of those activities could you be doing more of? You know, and like Lisa's example of hiring someone to make calls, would that help to create momentum for yourself? And was there an unexpected source of motivation or inspiration? And if there was, how could you reproduce that? How could you duplicate any kind of motivation or inspiration that happened to you? And then on the other side of all of this, what went wrong? And sometimes I'm sitting here, I'm doing these activities myself over the last few days, and I got to this question and I'm like, what did go wrong? I mean, here we are in a global pandemic. You know, there seems to be light at the end of the tunnel. Things really felt good for me this quarter. So maybe you really have to stretch or dig down to answer some of these questions, but don't skip them. Really try to figure out, because answers to these questions really begin to be the kernel of your process going forward. If you didn't achieve what you wanted to last quarter, what was it? What were the 3 worst things that happened? What can you learn from them? And what can you do better? This is a good question too, is identifying people in your current sphere who you could ask for help today. It's really good to know, as you're making your plan for the next quarter, who do you have in your corner? Who do you have in your back pocket that if you had a question, concern, you wanted to bounce ideas off of, who could you ask for help today? And finally, is there something you need to learn in the next quarter? Is there a skill you need to develop? Is there a technology you need to develop? Go ahead, Lisa.
Discipline.
Is there discipline? What does that look like? Okay, you say you need to learn discipline, what would that look like? Do you need to take a seminar in it? Do you need to go to, you know, do you need to hire a professional to keep you held accountable? What would that look like? And so really sort of brain map a little bit some of these ideas, and don't just fall back onto what you've done in the past. Every time you do this exercise, let it be a completely new holistic experience, and don't do it by rote. Really try to do it from scratch every single time. So these are your journaling questions. I've given you pages to do this part. And I think for me, my inclination always is to skip this, is to jump right into the goal setting. But don't. This really is important stuff. So then we got to figure out what our goals and projects are. And I've always struggled with this. I've got a list of 15 or 20 different things I want to do over the next quarter. How do I figure out which of those things are goals, which of those things are projects, and which of those things that I'm not going to attempt to do in the next 3 months? So let's talk a little bit about how I define goals and projects. First of all, I say all goals are projects, but not all projects are goals. Your goals are going to be an area of focus that will take you approximately 90 days to complete, or 90 days to complete a substantial portion of this. So for instance, your income is something that you're going to work all year on, but we can focus on the next 90 days. What is it how much money do you want to earn in the next 90 days? And that's going to be one goal for this period. Okay, we have a question. Let me just see this. 2 of my 3 wins are unrelated to real estate. Count them, count everything. Don't just, this is about life planning, not necessarily about real estate planning. And we're gonna get into how these things fit together. This is an excellent question. I think you should be looking at your life in a holistic way, not just about real estate. Thank you, Ruth. I think that's a great question. So a goal is something that you're going to concentrate for 90 days on, or a portion of it. A project, let me see. A project is an area of focus that you want to or need to spend time working on during this 90-day period. So for instance, in my life, in this 90-day period from January to March, one of the things that we're probably all working on right now is what?
Taxes.
Around this time of year, we need to be working on our taxes. Your taxes, that's a perfect example of a project. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end that can all take place in this period of time that we're talking about. So from January to April, we can do our taxes. We can get our taxes done and ready to go to the CPA, to the IRS by April 1st. And now, of course, we've got extra time. But at any rate, we can do that in this 90-day period. So for goals, you're thinking big. For a project, you're thinking slightly smaller. And think of your project as something that your beginning, middle, and end can happen in this 90-day period. So once we've sort of, and so I encourage you on, I think I've given you a 1 page to sort of jot down. And I say jot down 15 or 20 ideas of things that you want to be working on in the next 90 days. So for me, I've got my goals set on my desk in a little frame for my first quarter. And so for my first quarter, I had an income goal that I wanted to hit. I wanted to host 1 mastermind function, and I wanted to host 1 goal setting webinar. So here we are in my goal setting webinar that I wanted to do this quarter. And then I created myself 3 goals. 1 was income, and then there were 2 other goals. And then I created 8 projects for myself. So think of 3 goals and 5 to 8 projects that you're going to be working on. So here are my projects. My taxes. All right. It's my husband's birthday next week. And so I wanted to do all my planning for my husband's birthday in this period. I wanted to complete a certain number of workouts for my fitness. I wanted to complete 3 home projects. I wanted to collect 100 responses for my book that I'm working on. I wanted to take an updated Spanish diagnostic test to see where I am with my Spanish. I wanted to take at least one road trip. And I wanted to set my second quarter goals. So those were my first quarter projects and goals. Does that make sense?
It does, but you know what? When I'm right now, I'm jotting down some, and I'm having a hard time figuring out whether or not it's a goal or a project. I know you explained it, but I'm having.
It's okay. It's okay. First, write them down, and then you can decide as you go which ones you want to really emphasize. Which ones of these things are bigger? Which ones of these things are a little more open-ended? And which are going to require more focused energy. And those will tend to be your goals. And your projects will tend to be discrete and not open-ended at all in any way, something you can get done in 90 days or in less than 90 days. All right.
So if a goal requires steps, then it's a goal, it's not a project. The steps are.
Generally speaking, a goal is just a bigger project. It's a project that needs more attention, that needs more focus, that only you can do. These are goals. Your income, that's a perfect example. You're the only one who can do that. So when you're focusing on your goals, we want them to be smart. And we've heard this before, but I'm just going to quickly go over it. Your goal should be specific. So be very specific about what you want to achieve. Be as clear and specific as possible when it comes to your objectives. Just move everybody out of the way there. They should also be measurable. How will you know whether the goal you'd set was successful or not? This is why it's essential to have a goal that is not just specific, but measurable. It's a goal that is attainable. You can realistically expect to it. If you turn your attention to this goal, it is realistic for you to attain it in 90 days. It's relevant. It's something that's important to you. And we're going to get a little bit more in depth in the relevance question as we go through this, but it's something that means something to you. All right. And then finally, it's time bound. You can do it and you have a deadline to do it in this 90 days. And so when I said, my income goal was I'm going to earn at least X dollars by such and such a date. So by March 31st, I'm going to earn X dollars. And it should be a goal that is like measurable, relevant, specific, attainable, and time bound. All right. So each one of these projects and goals that we're thinking about will have a time component to it. So like your taxes is a perfect example. It's a project because it's not as big as a goal, but you have to have it done by a certain time. And it's attainable, it's measurable. You know when you're done that project. Okay. So, and then I've included, so for each one of your goals, I've included one worksheet. And so you'll see, what does that look like here? It says at the top, it says, what is your goal? And then this is where we get into the meat and nuts of your thinking about your goals. So I want you to think, how will achieving this goal improve my life? And this is a question that often comes up in these activities. But I also want to think about the reverse, because I think some of us are more driven by negative consequences than we are by positive consequences. So how will not achieving this goal worsen your life? It's the same question, but just the reverse. But I think it's really important to, especially if you're wired this way, to look at the negative consequences of not meeting that goal. How's it going to make you feel? If it's your income goal, how are you going to feel if you don't meet that income goal? What does that mean to your life? Does it mean you don't go on vacation this year? Does it mean that your kid's tuition doesn't get paid? Does it mean that you don't max out your IRA this year? Think about how your life is going to be negatively impacted by not meeting that goal. And then think about, like, literally what needs to happen to get you started, to keep going, to get this goal done. What is everything that you need to do? Who can you ask for guidance on this goal? Is it Marge? Is it Kevin? Is it Lisa? Who is it that you have in your realm, in your life today that you could ask for help? What deadlines do you need to be meeting in the next 90 days to hit these goals? And finally, is there something that you could tell yourself? Is there something encouraging that you could tell yourself to, in those moments where you're faltering, when you're not sure you're going to make it? Think about those things now. Think about rewards that you could give yourself along the way as you meet benchmarks. So set monthly benchmarks, in that deadline section, set monthly benchmarks for the next possible part of this project or goal, and figure out what would be an appropriate reward, or what's the opposite, a punishment for not meeting it. I used to have a personal trainer who, like, one of the first questions he asked is, who are you, a Republican? Are you a Democrat? And then he would say, all right, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to make you donate. You're going to give me $50. And if you don't meet this goal, I'm going to send it to your political rival, the one you hate. And it works. So think about rewards and punishments for yourself as you and tie them to deadlines. So then I've also included what I'm going to call little project planners for each one of your projects. And this is just space to take notes, to write out a chronology for each one of these projects, what needs to happen. And the thing is, take some time with all of this. This is not something you can do in 5 minutes, but really sit with each one of these projects. And you can do the same thing with each project as you do with a goal. You can ask yourself the same questions. The stakes tend to be a little bit lower with projects. They're smaller, they're a little more discrete in time. So the stakes are a little bit lower, but you could do the same kind of activity with how will achieving this project, how will completing this project improve my life? How will not achieving it negatively affect my life? And so on and so forth. But it's really good to figure out on those project planners, to figure out all the possible steps that you can think of for each one of these projects. And Ruth, these projects, like to your question, these projects don't have to be real estate related. Like maybe there's fitness goals. Maybe, like for me, I wanted to do some projects around the house that I'd been putting off. So I wanted to get them. I wanted to really get myself thinking about how to do this thing. Let's see here. So, Carolina said she had to leave, but we knew she did. So no big deal. Bye, Carolina. So let's see here. So name your project. I say my technique is to use a verb, like build a bookcase or have dinner with friends, or
something like an action verb.
An action verb, exactly. Because that ties your brain into thinking about movement, about doing something. And then establish your final deadline for whatever that project is, so like by March 31st, my goal was I was going to do 66 workouts, however I just defined a workout between January 1st and March 31st. I was going to do 66 of them. That was my goal. I'm not quite on track, but I still have a few days left. But I was going to complete 3 home projects. So basically I said, in January, I'm going to do 1 project. In February, I'm going to do another project. In March, I'm going to do a 3rd project. So figure out what your deadline for each one of these projects is going to be. And then make a list of every single action step you can think of that you're going to need to complete that. The thing is, you're not going to get this 100% right. And it doesn't matter. Because once you start working on it, you're going to uncover hidden steps that you didn't know about. And that's okay. But you're going to review yourself as you go.
I was going to say, what's nice about that is you can check things off as you do them, so you feel you're making progress.
Exactly. And if that's not enough reward, Juliet, then create rewards for each step, or for the important steps. Create some rewards for yourself. If that helps you. It does help me to know I've got something coming that is going to be pleasant. And then try again. You've got all your steps written out. Each one of those steps probably still has steps involved. So really get in deep with each one of these steps, and then assign deadlines. And then arrange the steps roughly in chronological order, and then, get to work. And for me, there is another step to this. Let's see. I don't know if I've written this down here or not. Assign due dates. Okay, so assign due dates to each one of these steps. But for me, the most important next step is to get these steps into my to-do list somehow. All right, I use a website called Todoist, where you can create projects and then break projects down into their individual action steps. I like that. You don't have to do it that way. You don't have to use like Evernote or whatever for this. I happen to use this website called Todoist, and it allows me to create a project and then all the steps under the project. And then once I assign a due date to each one of those steps, it appears on my to-do list for that day. And then once I'm a good worker bee, once a task gets onto my to-do list, I'll do it. But I will never do it if it doesn't. So this is one critical step for me, is to make sure that all those steps that I've created in each of my goals and my project plans, those get into Todoist somehow. And I usually will spend a half a day after I've done my quarterly plan to get every single step into my to-do list with a deadline. And, if you don't do something on the exact date that you've decided to do it, it's really not a big deal. So don't think you're like, sometimes I'll be working through this and thinking, I'm really going to overload my to-do list with all this stuff. But it doesn't, because you're not going to take 10 actions on 8 projects every single day. You're going to do maybe 5 action steps on 8 projects in a day's time. So these are tiny, tiny steps that you just need to. I have a business coach, and I meet with him every Wednesday, and he's like this straight guy, and his realm of thought is sports. And so he's always telling me, oh, Kevin, you moved the ball forward this week. I'm like, okay, I moved the ball forward. And so I've begun to think about it that way, even though I know nothing about sports. I know that moving the ball forward is generally, I guess, a good thing.
Progression, right?
Right. And sometimes, folks, this is like, and I've talked about this before, this is something I have really struggled with over the last year, trying to get a handle on this thing, because I am a chronic procrastinator. And so sometimes I got to just do what the smallest next step is. And maybe I don't complete that full step. Maybe it's what part of this step can I do in 1 minute? And maybe that step is I'm gonna think about this tomorrow. I'm gonna create a plan to get the next 3 steps done tomorrow. But again, once it pops up on my to-do list, I'll do it. I'll tackle it. But if it doesn't get there, I won't. All right. So we reward progress, not perfection, as we're going through this. All right. So then I've given you a couple pages here for a really down and dirty business plan, like the kind of business plan that you can do in 5 minutes.
Yeah, this is very nice. It's
But it
simple,
requires
but,
you to
because
know.
when it gets too big, it's difficult.
But if it gets too big, I won't do it. So
I
I
won't do
want it something simple. So basically what I've done
Nice.
is just said, you know, in 2021 or in the next quarter, I'm going to close X number of transactions. So first you got to know your numbers. You need to know your average sales price. You need to know your average commission. You need to know what your brokerage split is with Long and Foster. And then you can start filling this information in. And I don't think I have this here, but I'm just telling you, one of the things that I learned, you know, I go to all these business planning things just to learn stuff for like, so I can give talks like this. And Tom Ferry has an excellent business plan, like presentation. And what his basic thumbnail is, you will need between 40 and 60 real estate conversations to lead up to one sale. Fewer conversations, the more experienced and seasoned you are, the more conversations, the less experienced and seasoned you are. So for every transaction, you can count on 40 to 60 business related conversations. So let's say your goal is to sell 10 houses in a year. That means you need to have 600 conversations with people about real estate. So the goal then is to figure out how many conversations do I need to have in 3 months, and then in a month, and then in a week, and then in a day. So let's say you want to do 3 transactions in this quarter. All right, 3 times 60 is 180. 3 times 60 is 180. So I need to have 180 conversations in this 3-month period.
So
So
each
divide
month
that.
is 60, is that, each month is 60 transactions?
60 conversations for
Per
one
month.
transaction.
Ah,
I'm gonna have
oh,
3
okay,
transactions.
got
It's
you.
180 conversations
And
in 3 months.
when you say conversations, that includes calls, text, email, all that?
Tom Ferry will
You're
tell
saying
you
conversations.
it's a conversation, a voice-to-voice, face-to-face conversation. I think he would even loosen the definition to, if you have an interaction
Yeah,
by text, by email, where
Mhm.
you go back and forth in a conversational style,
yeah,
count it.
okay.
It's not you're sending a text to somebody and they don't respond. That's not
Right.
one.
No, that's not, yeah. No, but a
Okay?
lot of times.
It's not
it-
posting on social media and
No.
10 people like it. That's not a conversation.
Okay,
But if you have a voice-to-voice, face-to-face conversation, or if you have the online analog of that, then count it. So that means you got to have 60 conversations every month. Okay, and then that means you need to have like what, 15 a week? So like it's like 2.5 a day. All right, or 2 or 3 a day of these. That's not so bad, actually. The average realtor sells 10 houses a year. And in our marketplace, selling 10 houses a year earns you a really decent living. You can live on selling, you can live nicely on selling 10 houses a year. Now, these agents will talk about they sold 50 houses or so. I don't want to work that. I don't want to work that hard to sell 50 houses a year. But I will work hard to sell 10 houses a year. Okay, but you can do this business plan in 5 minutes, and then you can sort of plug in your numbers onto your income goal. So I need to have 3 conversations a day in order to make $100,000 a year, or actually more than that. All right. So if you got to know your numbers, you got to know how much you want to earn. You got to know how much that means in terms of sales. But once you know that, it plugs right in. So again, you're going to do the same activity. Here's your income goal. Top 5 ways that achieving that goal will improve your life. Top 5 ways that failing to approve it will worsen your life. And then you figure out what are your strategies to get those 3 conversations a day. So maybe you do them all on Sunday when you do an open house. But that means if you don't do 15 conversations at an open house, you're not hitting your goal. All right, make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How will this achieve blah, blah, blah? We've talked about this. What strategies will you deploy? What action steps do you need? And then you get all your action steps into your list, and your action steps then go on your calendar. I've also included, this is kind of an optional kind of worksheet about sort of thinking about the job that you do. You know, what is your business? What problems do you solve? Who's your ideal client? Thinking about your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I threw this in here. I think this is more of a good like goal planning, business planning activity for like December, when you have more of a track record over the year to figure out where you are. But I think it's good periodically to ask yourself these questions, because they can inform how you put information together for your presentations, you know, for your buyer presentation, for your listing presentation, for your marketing. This activity can really become the backbone of the messaging that you're sending out to the world. So while it's not necessary for the activities that we've talked about today, it's a good activity to do at some point. So I've thrown it in there as a bonus. All right, so let me move. I can't see my screen here. Reflect on what you do and how you do it. Who's your ideal client? What problems do you solve? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then also giving you a worksheet for marketing, the kind of marketing that you want to do. And I put it out so you can decide, I'm going to do these things daily, and I've given you some ideas, weekly, monthly, quarterly, biennially, yearly, so that you can decide, all right, I'm going to implement, you know, pick two ideas in each of these areas, and you will have a pretty robust marketing plan in minutes. Okay. So if you don't know what to do, I've given you a few ideas in each of these areas, but pick 1 or 2 or 3 in each of these areas and get them onto your to-do list. It's it's what's the word? It's simple, but not easy. This is simple, but not easy. I've also included a procrastination worksheet. This is something I use periodically when I get stuck, frankly. I will look up and I will see that there's an item on my to-do list that has been there for a week, 10 days, a quarter, and I have to figure out where's my block? Why am I hesitating to do this thing? Most of the time, the reason is it's a project that I have put on my to-do list thinking it's a task. And my brain says, Kevin, that's not a task. That's a project. I'm not doing it. But my brain doesn't tell me that. It just says I'm not doing it. All right. So this is an activity when you get stuck with something that's on your to-do list for 10 days, a week, however long that's troubling to you. Maybe it's 2 days. Maybe you say, I haven't done that in 2 days. I can't figure out why. Let me do this little activity. This will get you to the root of why you're struggling with that task. And it will coach you through figuring out what is the one thing, the one part of this I can do right now to give myself momentum. And it really does, it seems stupid to fill out a worksheet for something that's just sitting on your to-do list, but there's a reason it's sitting there. And you, as your job, as the boss of your company, as the CEO of You Incorporated, to figure out why that benchmark is not getting met. All right. And then you assign it to your worker bee, that's also you, by the way, to do this thing that's not getting done. All right. So I have found this to be very, very helpful. So then your homework is to go through, complete all of your journaling activities, these journaling exercises. Again, don't skip them. It's your instinct as a business person who wants to go and get this done will be to skip this, but don't. Make a list of 15 to 20 possible goals and projects. And also understand that you're going to put 15 goals and projects on your list. You're not going to do 15 goals and projects this quarter. But start a file. Start a file for your third quarter goals. Start a file right now for your third quarter goals and projects. And anything that doesn't make it into this slot of goals and projects, put a note into your third quarter folder. And what's really interesting is that once you get momentum, and this happened to me this quarter, once I got momentum going, inspiration struck several times over the course of this quarter where I'm like, oh, I should do X, Y, and Z. I've got a few minutes. Let me get started on that. And I was able to do some of the projects that didn't make it into my first quarter goals, just because I had inspiration, the moment to do it. And the thing didn't take that long. And so I was able to actually cross off goals for the second quarter that I had that had come to my mind because I had done this activity. All right. So then identify your 3 goals for the quarter. I say identify 4 to 8. I think 8 is a good number. 10 might be a good number for you. It might be stretching it, but I think over 10 and you're gonna overwhelm yourself. Identify an accountability partner. And maybe you have one accountability partner. Maybe you have a personal coach that you use. Maybe you identify 3 or 4 different accountability partners who can help you when you get stuck on these individual projects. But figure out who that person is now, so that when you do meet some challenge and you do say, oh gosh, I could use some help, you already know and have enlisted that person. Break down each goal and project into its smallest possible action steps. And this is good. If you have already identified an accountability partner or coach, maybe this is an activity that you do together, that you work on together. Having a second set of eyes on your list can often, having someone over your shoulder saying, oh, have you thought about going in this direction or that direction? Or here's what I would do. Here's how I would tackle that. it can really be useful at this particular juncture where you're trying to figure out all the different moving parts to the projects and goals that you're working on. And then finally, for me, this is the most important part, is to get each action step for each goal and project on your calendar, on your to-do list, so that you can hold yourself accountable to these things. All right. And then share. Once your goals are written, share them. This is the number one way of making yourself accountable, is to let people know what you're working on. So maybe it's your friends and loved ones, maybe it's your business coach, maybe it's Marge, maybe it's Lisa, me, maybe it's somebody in the office, to really, you know, you will hold yourself accountable more if you know other people can see what you're doing. All right. Questions. That's my shtick for your goals. Juliet, did you find that useful?
Well, it sounds good. It all sounds good.
Well, you know what? I have often found this to be a challenge. I've gone to Tom Ferry and I go to Brian Buffini, and for me,
especially if you're resistant to and not disciplined enough.
Yeah,
and more impulsive than, you know, and sticking with.
That we all struggle with.
Right.
Yeah, I do. And what will happen is, when you're on the right track, when you are sort of you've got momentum and you're moving in the right track, inspiration will strike.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have to decide in that moment, is this something I want to pursue right now? Do I have the time, energy, bandwidth? Does it relate to my 30,000 foot goals for this quarter for me to work on it? And if not, make a note, put it in your third quarter folder, and then move on. But sometimes you're going to say, yeah, that is something that fits. And a lot of times it will be something that fits because it's inspiration. It's come from the universe telling you what to do.
I think it's a good structure, at least for trying to organize yourself. You know, it's there if you plug your things in and then follow through.
It is. And
sorry, I have to go. Thank you so much. I have a meeting. I have to go back.
So it is. For me, the missing part, there were two missing parts when I look at a Brian Buffini or a Tom Ferry approach. And for me, the missing parts were the negative consequences, like really thinking about the negative consequences, because my brain is more in tune with, all right, what bad is going to befall me if I don't do this? That was missing for me. And what was also missing was the step where you affirmatively break down these goals into their smallest possible moving parts, and then to get them into some structure to remind myself to do them. Like I say, I'm a good worker bee, but I need someone to assign me the tasks. And I think that's hard for the CEO brain, because we don't want to micromanage our employee. We want to know that they're going to here's the goal. Like the CEO comes up with the goal, but then the worker has to do the work. But your worker brain doesn't know what to do. And so you will just sort of sit and go into your rote activity, whatever that is. And you may not, that's what happens with a lot of people, as they set their goals, they write them down, and they put them in a folder, and that's where they sit for 3 months. And so, and that's my instinct, is to do exactly that. And sometimes you'll surprise yourself. Sometimes you'll look at your notes from, last year's goal and find, oh my gosh, I did 90% of this. Other times you will look at that and say, oh shoot, I did nothing on that list. And so I think having a process like this where you really get down and dirty with your thinking, then breaking down those tasks and then making the point of getting them onto your to-do list really increases your odds of success with these things. And I have certainly found that to be, now this is a struggle, this is a challenge to do what I've talked about. But when I've really forced myself and not let myself off the hook on a daily basis, when I have my daily routines of like 30 things I want to do every day. There are some days I don't want to do 30 things to move the ball forward. But I can't let more than 1 or 2 days go by where I don't focus, I don't spend some time on these areas.
Was that list laminated?
I have it on a stand, like we put at open houses.
Oh, okay. You scared me a little.
And then I use a dry erase marker. So I've done all my routine. So here I'll rub it off. So there's I've done all my morning routines, but I still have got my afternoon routines to do.
Thank you, Kevin. I've got to go.
No, we're done. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. I'm happy to chat offline with anybody about any of this stuff. I love it. So
thank you immensely.
But that's my dog and pony show for the day. Let me know if you have questions, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.